Welcome back to Mystery Rift. I know they're getting shadow banned. They're not even seeing my videos. They're not even seeing my uploads. And it's very frustrating. Can't even tell you. But anyhow, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to appreciate the people that are here. Thank you. The case today. You've likely never heard about it. And that's part of the puzzle. It's quite a strange case. And I was genuinely surprised. I had never come across it before. It was through just some basic digging that we found this deep mystery. A case that screams missing 411. Right down the line, it involves a young girl, 12 years old, named Brenda Bliman. Brenda Bliman. She vanished on May 7th, 1961, on a wilderness trail at Lake Enid, British Columbia. This is the central part of British Columbia, in the deep southern end of the province. An area known for its rugged isolation. She lived in Radium Hot Springs, a short distance away, with her mother, father, and 4 siblings. Brenda was described as 5 feet tall, 100 pounds, with freckles. When last seen, she was wearing a purple and blue parka, which should have made her highly visible, gray slacks, and blue and white Oxford shoes. On May 6th, the day before, Brenda was staying at her grandmother's home in a city called Willmar, British Columbia, just north of Windermere Lake. She had a friend nearby, Vivian Barrett, who was just a little bit older than Brenda. Brenda was allowed to go meet Vivian. Vivian had planned a hike with 3 local boys, Edward Carson, age 17, John Carson, age 13, and Edward Godley, age 12. The group intended to hike towards Lake Enid. Now, the stories are already contradictory. Some articles claim they were only supposed to take a short, easy hike. Others insisted they were always intending to go to Lake Enid for fishing. This small, crucial difference was never clarified exactly, and that lack of certainty shadows the entire case. But this is what Vivian Barrett eventually told Brenda's mother about the day. While the group was on the remote trail, it suddenly started to hail. It was a rapid, intense weather shift. And everyone decided they were going to take immediate cover from the storm. But the time was approaching 4:00 p.m. Why is that important? Because do you remember what time I've said repeatedly is the optimum time for a disappearance? 4:00 p.m. Brenda realized that if she took cover for too long, she would certainly miss her pickup. So she told the group she needed to get going down the trail, even though the hail was still falling heavily. The 4 teenagers saw Brenda walking down the isolated trail, moving away from them. That was the last confirmed sighting of Brenda Bliman. A classic point of separation. They were on a specific trail between Willmar and the lake. Somewhere in that stretch of wilderness, she simply vanished. Remember, this area is incredibly wild. Grizzly bears, mountain lions, you name it. It's out there at 4:00. Brenda's parents were at the grandmother's house. No, Brenda. They immediately began searching and eventually contacted the kids. The father Ingvar Bliman immediately started walking the trail that Vivian said they were on, looking for his daughter. Shortly after, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, arrived. Pretty soon, the entire community knew that a young girl was missing in the deep woods. The word went out quickly across 4 different towns. On May 8th, the very next morning, all the mills, the mines, and the businesses in those 4 communities shut down completely. They told all the men, go and help out on that search for Brenda. A staggering 400 men showed up. A massive volunteer effort directed by the RCMP, who also summoned a helicopter. Coordinating that many people in the wilderness is a logistical nightmare. The searchers were likely operating under standard search and rescue assumptions. That a child this age is found 75% of the time in 2 miles or less. But as we know from David Paulides' work, these parameters often fail in these cases. They were out there for days. May 10th. Brenda's mother told the press she was convinced her daughter was terrified, probably panicking, and actively avoiding the searchers. The conditions were brutal. Temps at night were in the low 30 seconds. There was heavy rain and freezing rain. Searchers were becoming frozen to the bone and suffering extreme exhaustion. The RCMP quickly dismissed any talk of animal predation. They argued that if a bear or mountain lion had been involved, searchers would have found an obvious scene: torn clothing, blood, clear drag marks. There was nothing. They tried a brilliant strategy, building huge bonfires on the hills and mountains at night, hoping to attract Brenda's attention and guide her in. It was a beacon of light in the darkness, but the ominous weather persisted. On May 11th, the RCMP stated the search helicopter was completely grounded because of the weather. Another classic 411 obstacle, and the 2 different canine units they brought in both failed. They couldn't find a scent trail to follow, as if Brenda's scent had been erased or carried away by the cold air. Searchers did find a human skull deep in the woods, confirming they were covering every inch of terrain. It was an old skull, likely belonging to a man who vanished 30 years prior. That shows diligence. But with the volunteer efforts dwindling, people needed to return to work to support their families. The search intensity waned. By May 15th, the RCMP claimed all possible areas had been searched at least twice. A few days later, the RCMP started changing their story. They were now saying they were looking into the possibility Brenda got a ride out of the area. This contradicts their earlier official statements that such reports were unfounded. It felt like an out, a way to justify calling off the hunt in the wilderness. They gave absolutely no supporting details, no car description, no witness testimony. And then the strange conclusion: on May 23rd, the RCMP stated they believe she's dead, and they are closing the case. Think about that logic. If she's dead and the case is closed, they are declaring no foul play. Not a criminal matter. They never said where they thought she was dead, or how. How do you close a missing person case where no body has been found? It is simply insane. Brenda's father, Ingvar Bliman, searched relentlessly, consumed with finding his daughter. He died young, at age 59, never knowing what became of her. Years later, a bizarre story surfaced 3 boys claimed they found an intact small skeleton in the woods in the 70 seconds and buried it. But an intact skeleton after 15 years in that environment, it's highly improbable. But here is the most important development. Something that makes the mystery even deeper. In 1991, 30 years after Brenda vanished, a cold case detective brought in the 4 teenagers Brenda was with. He brought them in one at a time, interviewed them, and then asked them to take a polygraph. They all said yes, which is surprising. And they all passed. Their stories, which lined up consistently, were that they last saw her walking down the trail away from them, and they had absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance. So we are left with this: 5 people in the middle of the wilderness. 1 walks away during a sudden weather event. 4 watch her go. She vanishes without a trace. The 4 pass a polygraph. No clue is ever found. The classic missing 411 profile is complete: a sudden point of separation. A massive search with no results. Extreme weather and failure of the canine units. Where did she go? Even today, this case is assigned to a cold case detective, which is confusing since they said it was closed decades ago. Do I think the case will ever be solved? Never. The witnesses are gone. The parents are gone. It's not solvable at this point. But I admire her brothers and sisters that are still banging that drum, trying to find answers. It's a dead bang. Bang on. Missing 411 case out of British Columbia. Canada. A very confusing case with a lot of twists and turns. But the core event is undeniable. Share this with your friends on social media. Really. Please. And let's talk about kindness. I'm around Huck 80% of the time. I have no problem being kind to her all the time. I read a difficult article recently about cruelty to animals, and I just don't understand it. If you are lonely and you don't have a dog, cat, get one. It will absolutely change your focus in life. It will show you very quickly that somebody genuinely loves you. Sometimes when you're alone, you maybe forget that feeling. Go down to your shelter. Take a look. You will know when you run across someone in there that needs you. And you'll find out you need them too. That's how the kindness starts. Real easily. Be safe. Be kind. Paulides out.